Welcome Math 10Cs to Factoring Polynomials Lesson 6. We're going to factor polynomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a doesn't equal 1. So we're going to call these complex trinomials. We've been factoring ones that have an a value of 1. They were simple, and we did some difference of squares, but we're going to look at some complex trinomials now. All right. So let's complete the following warm-up. Expand this out. 2x plus 1 times 3x plus 4. 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times 4 is 8x, 1 times 3 is 3x, 8 and 3 is 11x, and then 1 times 4 is a positive 4. So what that means is 6x squared plus 11x plus 4 can be factored as 2x plus 1 times 3x plus 4. You gotta do the next one real quick. Pause this video and do that. So here's what we should have come up with. 3x minus 2 times 4x plus 3 is 12x squared plus x minus 6, or 12x squared plus x minus 6 factors as those two binomials. Notice the a value in both these trinomials is greater than 1. And look at our factors. 2x times 3x gave us 6x squared. 3x times 4x gave us 12x squared. All right. So consider the following problem. What are the factors of 2x squared plus 7x plus 6? So we need to find two binomials whose product is 2x squared plus 7x plus 6. And the first method we're going to look to factor this is using some algebra tiles. So write the polynomial expression for the group of algebra tiles shown. I've got 2x squareds. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 x's. And we've got 6 singles. So arrange the algebra tiles into a rectangle. State the length and width of this rectangle. Again, pause this video and do that, please. So this is the rectangular shape I came up with. It's got a length of 2x plus 3 and a width of x plus 2. So I can say that the factors of 2x squared plus 7x plus 6 are 2x plus 3 times x plus 2. If I expand that out, I will get 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. So that's a great way to factor if you like algebra tiles. All right. Let's factor this one using algebra tiles. So again, draw a rectangle out of those algebra tiles and state the length and width. Away you go. So there's 5x squareds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5x squareds. I've got 7x's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7x's, and my two positives. Write this as length times width. So I've got 5x's here plus 2. I've got 1x plus 1 right there. So the factors of 5x squared plus 7x plus 2 are the length and width. 5x plus 2 times x plus 1. So algebra tiles will work every time. Might take a little bit of while to draw those out. Like it says here, it can be a bit tedious and take a while to do that. Another method is to use decomposition. All right, we're going to use the method of decomposition, but before we do that, let's review how to factor by grouping. We had a little worksheet on that, and let's do a quick review of that. If I've got 4 terms and none of them have a common factor, I want to factor the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms by grouping. So the common factor of the first 2 terms is a 3x. Divide both those terms by 3x, I'm left with 2x plus 1. The common factor of the last 2 terms is a positive 4. If I divide both those terms by positive 4, I'm left with 2x plus 1. You know you factored by grouping correctly if you've got a common binomial factor. We factor out that binomial of 2x plus 1, and we're left with 3x plus 4. I factored that 4-term expression by grouping. All right, you guys pause it and try part 2. So we factor the first 2 terms. Common factor is 3x, we're left with 4x plus 3. The common factor of the last 2 terms are minus 2. We're left with 4x plus 3. 4x plus 3 is our common binomial factor. So I factor that out, and I'm left with 3x minus 2. Great, that is factoring by grouping. If you can do that, we can do the method of decomposition. Those are the key steps to factoring using decomposition. So right above, we just factored 6x squared plus 3x plus 8x plus 4, which really is, if I combine those two middle terms, 3x and 8x is really 11x. So it's really a trinomial. So we factored this complex trinomial, a is greater than 1, as factors of 2x plus 1 times 3x plus 4. So in order to factor 6x squared plus 11x plus 4 as a complex trinomial, we want to write it as a 4-term expression and factor by grouping. I'm going to split up the middle term, which is 11x, into 2 terms. They happen to be 3 and 8. Now, where would I pick 3 and 8 from? I have to figure out what numbers multiply to 6 times 4. So 3 times 8 is 24, 24 just like 6 times 4 is. So it tells us, why would we use 3x and 8x rather than 2x and 9x? Because 2 and 9 also give us 11. Well, 2 times 9 multiplied to 18, whereas 6 times 4 is 24, just like 3 times 8 is 24. So it says, well, look at that in the next page. We'll look at it right now again in warm up 2. Again, the two middle terms, 12x squared plus 9x minus 8x, they add up to a positive 1. And this complex trinomial factors as 4x plus 3 times 3x minus 2. We just did that up above by factoring by grouping. All right. So in order to factor this trinomial, I want to split it into a 4-term polynomial, and we're going to change the 1x into 9x and negative 8x. Now, why 9 and 8? Why those two terms? So we know that 1 can split into positive 9 and minus 8, but 1 can also split into positive 5 and minus 4. Why would I choose 9 and negative 8? Well, 12 times negative 6 is negative 72, 9 times negative 8 is negative 72, whereas 5 times negative 4 is not a negative 72. So we'll talk about that on the next page right here. So how are the numbers 8 and 3 connected? And how are the numbers 9 and negative 8 connected? Well, right here, the method of factoring x squared plus bx plus c by splitting the value of b or decomposing it into two integers whose product is a times c. So you have to take the a and multiply it by the c. That's called the method of decomposition. So it's best just to watch how to do a few. All right. So we're going to ask ourselves, what two numbers have a sum of 7, the middle term, and a product of 2 times 6, which is 12. So we did this kind of work with simple trinomials. So what two numbers add to 7 multiply to 12? Well, those numbers are 3 and 4. With the simple trinomial, we use those numbers to factor it as maybe x plus 3 and x plus 4. But with the method of decomposition, this is just the start of the method. I now take this middle term of 7x and I decompose it. Decomposition is breaking down. I make it into a 4-term expression. So I keep the 2x squared. And I rewrite 7x as 3x and 4x. And it doesn't matter what order I write it. I can put the 3x first or the 4x first. So it doesn't matter. You can't go wrong as long as you get the two right numbers. So I've changed a trinomial into a 4-term expression by decomposing the middle term using these numbers we just found. And now it's factoring by grouping. So we've done this already. The common factor of the first two terms is an x. So I factor out an x and I'm left with 2x plus 3. The common factor of the last two terms is a positive 2. I divide both those terms by positive 2 and I get 2x plus 3. You know you factored by grouping correctly if you have the same binomial common factor. And if we do, we factor out that binomial common factor. And we're left with x plus 2. Beautiful. There are the factors of our complex trinomial. If we expand out our factors, we're going to get what we started with. All right. Let's try another one. Part B. Step 1, ask ourselves, what two numbers have a sum of the middle term, 7, and a product of the first times last, 5 times 2 is 10. So what two numbers add to 7 multiply to 10? Well, we've done that before. That's 5 and 2. That used to be the end of our factoring. Now it's just the beginning. Now we have to decompose that middle term using these numbers, 5 and 2. So we keep our first term, 5x squared. We rewrite 7x as 5x plus 2x. So it's the exact same value, it just looks a little bit different. 5x plus 2x is 7x. We keep our last term of positive 2. I've now changed my trinomial into a 4-term expression that I can factor by grouping. So the common factor of the first two terms is a 5x. I'm left with x plus 1. The common factor of the last two terms is a positive 2. I'm left with x plus 1. If I factored it correctly, I should have a common binomial factor. Beautiful. I factor out that x plus 1, and I'm left with 5x plus 2. That is the complete factorization of our complex trinomial that we started with. All right, let's try a couple more. 6x squared plus 17x minus 3. Exact same steps. We ask ourselves, what two numbers have a sum of the middle term, positive 17, and a product of the first times last? 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. So two numbers that add to 17 multiply to negative 18 are 18 and negative 1. What do I do with those two numbers? Well, we decompose the middle term. So you keep the 6x squared. You rewrite 17x as these two numbers, positive 18x and minus 1x. And then we keep the minus 3. So that's the method of decomposition. Once I'm done that, this is factoring we've already done. We factored by grouping. We look at the first two terms and take out the common factor, which is a 6x. And we're left with x plus 3. We look at the last two terms and we take out a common factor. Well, there's nothing really common but the minus sign, so I'm going to factor out a minus 1. And that leaves me with a positive x and a positive 3. And like I said earlier, if we did it right, I've got a common binomial factor that I will take out, factor out that x plus 3, I'm left with 6x minus 1. There are the factors of the trinomial that we started with, 6x squared plus 17x minus 3. All right. Let's try part B. Same procedure, same steps, every single time. Ask yourself, what two numbers have a sum of the middle term, negative 2, and a product of the first times the last? 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. So what two numbers add to negative 2, multiply to negative 24? Well, those are negative 6 and positive 4. What do I do with those two numbers? I decompose that middle term using these two numbers we just found, negative 6 and positive 4. So I take my first term, 3n squared, decompose the middle term, and it can be written in any order, minus 6n plus 4n. And I write the last term minus 8. And I've got a 4-term polynomial that I factor by grouping. Common factor of the first two terms is a 3n. I'm left with n minus 2. Common factor of the last two terms is a positive 4. And I'm left with n minus 2. If we did it right, we should have a common binomial factor. That common binomial factor, we factor out the n minus 2. We're left with 3n plus 4. Method of decomposition works every single time if it's a factorable trinomial, just like we started with right there. All right. I would like you guys to try part C, pause the video and give it a shot. If you did it properly, here's one method we could have had. The 6x negative and the 2x negative right here don't have to be written in that order, but no matter how you did it, we should have got the correct answer of 2x minus 1 times 6x minus 1. We're going to do one more down here. Let's factor A of example 5. The same procedure. What two numbers have a sum of the middle? So sum of negative 7, a product of 15 times negative 2, which is negative 30. So those two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to negative 7 are negative 10 and positive 3. What do we do with those two numbers? We decompose the middle term. So I've got 15 minus 10y plus 3y. That's the same as negative 7y. And I've got a minus 2y squared at the end. I now have a 4-term expression I can factor by grouping. The common factor of the first two terms is a 5. I'm left with 3 minus 2y. The common factor of the last two terms is just a positive y. So I divide both terms by positive y. I'm left with 3 minus 2y. If I did it right, I should have a common binomial factor, which we do. That is 3 minus 2y. I'm left with 5 plus y. All right. So all I want you to do for homework, I would like you to try example B right here, and on the next page, try to factor the two questions in example 6. Try and factor A and B on this page. We'll look at them tomorrow in class and we'll go from there. See you then.